2017 Ninja 300 6-month review. Alright guys, this is the 2017 Ninja 300 in the candy or plasma blue color. I think it's called, that's what it's called. I'm gonna put this on here, showing you guys the miles I got on this thing. So a little over 1,000 miles on it. I've used this bike for some commuting. I don't live too far from work. I guess first thing I'll tell you about it was that when I went to get it, I got tons, and I mean tons of hate. Everybody said, oh, it's not going to be fast enough to get on the highway. You're too big for a 300. I'm 6'4". Honestly, it's been a great little bike. The one thing I will agree with everybody on is that for me particularly, I do want a little bit more power. The 0 to 60 on this bike is pretty good. It does get up and go. And I think it does 0 to 60 in about 5.5 seconds. And there's been a few times where I've accidentally the front wheels gotten off the ground while taking off. I think the best thing about this bike though was that it's very forgiving. If for some reason you hit a pothole and you hit the throttle a little bit, it's not going to send your front wheel in the air and throw you off the back of the bike if you're not expecting it. I have kept this bike completely stock though, for the reason that I do want to keep it for a little while longer. Not much. I'm going to keep it for about another 6 months. And I've got my eyes set on another bike. This one was a ton of fun and it was a really good learning tool. And at that point I'll have had it for a year. The biggest thing with this, learning on this, was that they're very cheap. Very, very, very cheap. I bought this brand new and I got a crazy cheap deal. And you got to think an R6 or a ZX6R is going to run you, brand new, like $10,000 to $12,000. One, I wanted a new bike. I didn't want to run into any other issues other than the issues of me knowing how to ride it, and that was pretty much my biggest thing. Is I just wanted a new bike, so I went ahead and got this one after a bunch of research, and I test drove this, and it suited my needs, and it was also a good intro. The big reason I'm glad I did it is because now that I've had it, it's not that I don't like this bike. I don't like the super sport style. I know this isn't a super sport exactly because it doesn't fit 100% that category. Is a little bit more upright, but they're not that comfortable. The ZX6R is not that comfortable, and after riding this, I don't want a super sport. I thought I was going to get this and then eventually upgrade to a ZX6R. That's completely off the books. What I'm going to be getting in about 6 months is a Z900. So the reason for that one will be the Z900 is something I can grow into, something I could keep forever. That's got, it's got the inline 4 and it's got tons of power. So it's going to be a little bit more fun, but the big picture of that is it's way more comfortable. And I'm not really losing anything. I barely paid anything for this bike new. I'll probably lose $1,000. $1,000 for a year of learning, never laying down the bike, and it's a good looking bike. I really like it. But it's not a forever bike. Other than the comfort, the power's pretty decent. It gets up to highway speeds, has no problem getting up to 100. And the 0 to 60 is very good. It keeps up and passes most of the cars on the road. But when looking for the next bike's going to be a forever bike. The Z900 fits all of the categories that this one doesn't. And those categories would be, comfort is the biggest one, and then big power. Of course, now that I've been learning how to ride a little bit better and feel more comfortable, because when I got this bike, I didn't feel comfortable with bikes in general. I actually practiced riding on my buddy's FZ7, which is, I thought, way too torquey for me, and it'd get me in a lot of trouble or get me hurt. So I went and actually got this and got tons of hate, but I'm glad I did. They're cheap. It was a good learning tool, and I'm glad I spent this little bit of money instead of spending $10,000 or $12,000 and having to take out a loan on a ZX6R, because I was able to buy this bike cash, and I'll be able to sell it in about 6 months and get my new bike. And yeah, it was a good learning experience. I think anybody who hates on you, once they get on one of these, my buddy's got an R6, and he took this for a little spin, and he was like, this actually is pretty quick. I didn't think a 300 was quick. I think a lot of people, when they're thinking 300, that honestly you're thinking about like the Rebel 300 or a cruiser. They're much slower. They're very slow. Even the Rebel 500 is slower than this bike. This bike actually is decently quick, and I've had a really good time with it. But I definitely know that I'm ready to get a new bike in the next 6 months or so, just because this one isn't very comfortable. The speed isn't the biggest factor. I have a good time on that. It's just not a very comfortable bike, and I'm sure I could change some things like getting a new seat. But honestly, after sitting on an R6, sitting on a ZX6R, I think just the super sport style isn't going to be for me, and the Z900 will be my next bike. But I just wanted to give you guys some info, and anybody who's thinking about getting one, or their friends trying to talk them out of it. Honestly, if this is what you're comfortable with, don't let anyone tell you differently, because I've really enjoyed learning on this bike, and it's helped me feel more comfortable and not, wreck my bike and not get myself into trouble. I've just had 6 months of learning, hitting the twisties and getting more comfortable, getting comfortable riding on the highway. And now that I'm comfortable, I'm ready to get onto a bigger bike. Now, everybody's different. I've had friends start on 750s, and obviously seen some people online start on leader bikes. So obviously just do what you're comfortable with. But if you're a little nervous or apprehensive to get on a 600, think about getting one of these. They're very cheap. They got them used all the time for $2,500. I bought this brand new for $4,000. Obviously just because it was basically the new models were coming out. But the cheap bike, $4,000 for a brand new bike is nothing. So just think about it. If this is something you want to get into bike riding, and this would be a cheap start, and honestly, you're not going to lose too much money if you ride it for a year or two.